And I'm Guy, and you're watching American Greatness, where we cover Trump, the midterms, and the 2028 election from a distinctly conservative perspective.
Sure. But first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it is what helps us out the most. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live after each segment. However, we do prioritize super chats, and those really help us out as well a lot. And we have memberships. Thank you so much to all our members.
And I will say some of the comments got deleted because we had to restart
the stream.
Yeah, restart the stream there.
But thank you, and hello to Anya Zinsky. I know your comment was one of the lost ones, but thank you so much for being here. And that was, I think, and yours got deleted.
Well, Michael Drader there.
Yes, but also Michael Drader, hello, and says enjoying a Cameros made Cereza tuning in besos. And thank you so much for being a member for 3 months as well.
Yeah, before we get into the first section, maybe we can talk about all the trials and tribulations we had today. We started trying to make edited videos, but we were having a ton of trouble because we've been doing lives for so long. And when you used to make edited videos, it was much more scripted. We're trying to go more off the cuff, and we were just
harder than we thought.
Having a heck of a time. So I guess there's a bit of a learning curve, but as we start putting them out there, please give them a like and be kind with them because, man, it's much harder than I remember it being.
And Steven Jensen, hello, and nice to see you here. Says hello from Mirror, Alberta, Freedom Central. Hope everything is going great over there as well. And Silverfeet, also hello. Thank you for being here.
And let's get into the first section, which is the Trump effect.
Yes.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Stole the words right out of my mouth there. But let's start with this from Nick Sortor saying, quote, just in, President Trump says AOC is trying to dupe the public, has been trying for a long time, like she's no longer, quote unquote, woke, so she can run for president in 2028. Saying, quote, the woke will become woke again as soon as they get elected.
Yeah, she came off with that statement of woke 1 was crazy. Yeah, woke 2 is going to be even more crazy if the American public vote her in. Hopefully it's JD Vance, Marco Rubio 2028. That's going to be a hard ticket to beat, but let's hear what Trump had to say about it. And it's good when he puts his voice behind something so people can realize what's going on here. The DSA is the part of the Democratic Party AOC is a part of, and that is the Democratic Socialists of America.
She said the other week, AOC, woke 1 was crazy. She's trying to back away from those comments. Why do you think she's trying to do that? Is she going to run for president?
I think so. But if you really look at it, they're all saying the same thing. They're all trying to disavow themselves from saying about crime. And we love sanctuary cities. All the things that they said, they're now trying to disavow. But people know the woke. I mean, they know the woke. And the woke will become woke again as soon as they get elected.
She said the other week, AOC.
Yep, and it does seem like she is trying to run for president because she also did this whole propaganda piece about freezing your eggs and blah, blah, blah.
Well, the DSA only has 2 acceptable members that could possibly be president, and they're trying to whitewash them right now, meaning get rid of their radical tendencies, and they want to distance themselves from a lot of these DSA policies. But these DSA policies are on their website. It's going to be very hard to do, especially their past statements as well. Those 2 people are AOC as well as Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders may be a little bit easier to kind of whitewash for the DSA there.
But I do think Bernie Sanders is the crypt keeper. He's 80-something years old. I don't know if they will run him, but I mean, maybe if they do run him and for some reason he does win, he'll just be in for a short period of time.
Well, he's always had those socialist policies and he hasn't really moved. AOC, on the other hand, is going one side, then going the other, say, well, no, that's not really the kind of socialism I want, blah, blah, blah.
But next, Nick Sortoroso says, quote, President Trump reveals even India has more secure elections than America, as 646 million Indians voted and every single one was required to have a valid photo ID. Trump should declare a national emergency for elections requiring photo ID. And as I always say it, me being from Mexico, we have, our ID here in Mexico is a voter's ID. It's a physical card. It's not digital, for now, hopefully. But it's something that is just instilled into most modern or modern-ish democracies.
You want to call it a democratic democracy, yet you don't even have a voter ID. You can't even tell who it is. We actually have quite a few stories today of people being able to vouch, not have an ID at all, and being allowed to vote in elections. This is absolutely ridiculous. Trump is trying extremely hard right now to pass the SAVE Act, and the Democrats are just stonewalling him. This is one of the big reasons we need victories in both the House and the Senate in the midterm so that we can clean up up that 2028 election. I believe Trump here is also going to talk about the amount of money going into India. It doesn't take a lot of money to rig foreign elections like it does in, I would say, a Canada or a United States. So the money that was going through USAID to India, I think, probably had a large impact on their elections.
And $21 million for voter turnout in India. What do we need to spend $21 million for voter turnout in India? Wow, $21 million. I guess they were trying to get somebody else elected. Well, we ought to tell the Indian government, because when we hear that Russia spent about $2 in our country, it was a big deal, right? They took some internet ads for $2,000. This is a total breakthrough. $21 million for India elections. $29 million to strengthen the political landscape in Bangladesh. $20 million for fiscal federalism, and $19 million in addition to the $21 million for biodiversity conversion in Nepal, and $21 million for voter turnout.
And also, with the USAID and voting specifically, we also saw that as soon as USAID got cut off, magically, the rest of Latin America started turning towards the right, or at least more towards common sense, where after the pink wave and all of these socialist and literal communists came into power for 40, 50, 60 years, depending on the country you're looking at, now we're getting more and more right-wing or right-wing adjacent, I would even call them, but common sense people that do want to fix issues coming in, now that there's no money flowing from the outside.
Well, this is one of the big impacts of Trump, was cutting off USAID, and American citizens might not see it as much, but when you're living in Mexico like we are, we already fled Canada because of the crazy politics there. We now live in Mexico City, but all over, not only Central America, South America, but Europe and other places in the world, you're actually starting to get honest results of elections. What happened when you're flowing in hundreds of millions of dollars into these foreign governments to kind of sway elections? They come with woke globalist policies along with them. And that's why we were able to see this wave of nonsensical government policies, not doing what their citizens want, but did what their puppet masters wanted, the ones that were supplying the bags of money.
And again, being plans that had been thought of and implemented for decades, not only years. But lastly, Nick Sorter says, quote, President Trump is going off on South Korea for refusing to assist his Iran operation despite how much we help them.
Yeah, this is one of the big countries. America has a huge military presence over there on a permanent basis because South Korea requests it, because they have that huge border with North Korea, who is very hostile to them. Let's go into this, but I'll say this isn't just South Korea not helping the United States in a lot of senses. We've seen Great Britain, the EU, do similar things when he asked for help in Iran with the Strait of Hormuz. Yet he's constantly helping with the Ukraine war, yet they can't do the same thing back. It's a little bit ridiculous, and it's exposing some of our friends maybe aren't so friendly to the United States.
Mm-hmm. Why hasn't Kim Jong-un responded to your request to have a conversation?
How do you know he hasn't responded?
Has he?
Yeah, he has.
Where are you in conversation?
And very positive. Well, just so you understand with South Korea, look, South Korea has been protected by us for many, many years. And during my first term, they agreed to pay close to $3 billion a year for protection, because we don't, they essentially weren't paying. And I asked them to do that at my request. I said, no, they weren't happy about it, but they agreed. I asked for $10 billion, and they were very unhappy. But we agreed for a short term that it would be $3 billion, and next year it would go up, and the next year it would go up, so they start paying for their protection. When the election was rigged, and I ended up watching for 4 years and then coming back, I watched Biden rescind that $3 billion here for whatever reason. When I called recently President of South Korea, who I like, I think he's very nice actually, but I called him, I said, would you like to give us a little hand? We don't need help with Iran, but if you'd like, give us a hand with Iran. He said, no thanks. And I said, wait a minute, we have 39,000 soldiers over there guarding you from Kim Jong-un, your next door neighbor, and you're not going to help us on a very easy military operation in Iran? That's strange. No, we'd rather not get involved. I say, well, why are we involved in helping you? So, and I want to help them, but, when you ask somebody, would you like to give us a hand, and they say, no thanks, and then we're guarding them from a country and paying
ourselves.
And we can leave it there. And I will say there are a lot of countries that take American protection for granted, Canada being one of them. They basically don't have a military at this point, or the little military they have is extremely woke, extremely small, under-equipped. Canada claims they're going to be making major investments into their military. Yet when you look between the lines, they're actually investing in infrastructure and writing it off as military spending and trying to tell the United States as well as Trump, oh, we got this, we're now meeting our military quotas. No, you're not in any way, shape, or form. You need massive help shutting down those shipping lanes in the north that China is constantly going through, claiming it is international waters. I've talked about the new strategy of the United States. When they war-gamed a war against China, they lost almost every time, except when they used one strategy, and that was cutting off shipping lanes around the world. Yet when Trump's asking for help for different things, whether that's help in the Strait over Hormuz or help to help Canada to shut down those shipping lanes and protect those shipping lanes, they're saying no. And I don't know how this thing's going to turn out, but...
But now let's go back to your comments, and then we'll get into the MAGA section. Michael Drader says, silly AOC. If we deport NDP supporters into AOCs, we could probably turn her Republican. I mean, maybe at this point, now that she has changed her mind on a lot of the positions that she used to hold so dearly, maybe she would turn Republican by seeing the insanity coming over from Canada.
Well, it's very interesting because the DSA is starting to take over the Democratic Party. The midterms as well as the 2028 election will determine whether the traditional Democrats can kick the DSA socialist communists out of their party or they'll take it over, much like Trump took over the Republican Party. Trump taking over the Republican Party, though, was a very, very good thing, and he has very common sense policies undoing a lot of these globalist policies. I'd say that NDP in Canada are a little bit different. What they kind of do, they have no real hope to ever get in power, but they normalize ideas. They pitch the idea, the mainstream media talks about the idea, and then 6 to 12 months later, you hear Mark Carney and the Liberals starting to pitch the idea in a much softer way, but the same general idea, whether that's government-run grocery stores or crazy climate policies.
Stephen Jensen, oh no, says car insurance is going up from $1,800 a year to $3,095 a year because of the accident. Insurance is rip-off industry.
Oh
it's a
my
rip-off industry. Yes.
God, that is
And it wasn't even your
absolutely
fault.
ridiculous. And British Columbia is even worse. We used to live in BC before we fled Canada. And I'll say it's a monopolized insurance industry. There's only one insurer, and that's through the government.
Yeah. Oh, surprise, in Canada, everything's through the government, and everything is a ripoff as well. Stephen Jensen says you couldn't get AOC to peel an egg, let alone run the country. Well, she really wants to try, and apparently because of that, she's freezing her own eggs. Maybe she'll peel them.
Yeah, and we have to remember, it's not really AOC that's going to be running that country. When she was originally recruited into her political position, her brother actually replied to an ad for an actress and put her sister up, and then she ended up going in for the audition, and she got it. But it wasn't for an actress, it was for a politician. And we see a lot of governments in the world now trying to recruit actors, social media streamers into politics.
Yeah. And Yazinski says, vehicle insurance from rural to urban is so much higher. I moved last winter to Edmonton and my insurance went up $200. I'm going to move back to the rural area again. So crazy. And that would be a month, says Ann Yazinski.
Yeah, or at least keep the address so you can claim you're living rurally, because that's a lot. I mean, Canada is absolutely crazy when it comes to food bills, cell phone bills, car insurance. I remember even in BC, that free healthcare we had used to not be free. They actually used to charge people for it.
And now they still charge you for it, but through taxes, up to 40% in some cases, and in some provinces, people paying more on taxes than their own groceries or basic life necessities, which is insane for services that don't actually take you anywhere. And it's crazy also that because people are spending so much money on the government itself and essentially being sucked dry of their own money, they can't go elsewhere to see that this is not normal. A lot of people in Canada think it's normal to pay so much in taxes, think it's normal to have such a bad healthcare system, or they've just gotten used to it. If you go elsewhere, even in Latin America, you can tell that that is not how life is supposed to be. And I think at this point, a lot of Canadians have forgotten about that. And hopefully Americans don't and keep the freedoms they have and the ideas they have too. But Don Netalick says, hi, Nat and Guy. Hello. Says, lost my phone. Oh, no. And all my info 2 weeks ago. Took me a week to find one of your podcasts on my new phone. Good to be back. Well, maybe that's why nobody ever finds it.
Yeah, well, it's glad to have you back
Yes.
any which way. And hopefully we're going to get better at making edited videos. We are having a lot of trouble today, but we're going to keep trying until we get it right.
Yes. And Don Alex says, and hello, everyone. But hopefully, and luckily now, it looks like your phone is going to be working. And on that note, let's get into the next segment, which is MAGA.
We will make America great again.
Because you want to make America great again, and you want to keep it, otherwise you become Canada.
Yeah, and this Make America Great section, again, is basically general American news. I try to highlight high points, don't try to get too negative, but sometimes I just can't avoid Gavin Newsom, and I know he's in the segment today.
Oh, great. But let's start with Laura Ingraham saying, quote, blue states side with illegal truckers over American safety.
Yeah, and I think I put a couple articles back to back about truck driving. Truck driving is one of the most important industries for blue collar males. It's the #1 job, not only in the United States, but in Canada and around a lot of Western countries. We really need to protect truckers. I know they're giving out a lot of licenses to a lot of immigrants who are getting in a lot of car wrecks. The solution to that is to make sure people know how to speak the language and are properly certified. We do not want AI trucks taking blue collar jobs from working men and women of the country.
Because again, by the mistakes of allowing illegal truck drivers and then seeing those accidents and publicizing them a lot, you get people to say, well, but we want a solution. We want this to be more regulated. And then the solution would probably always become, well, let's make them all self-driving trucks so there's no issues at all. And then a bunch of people lose their jobs.
Well, and you also have to remember a lot of these truck drivers, when they first get their licensing and things like that, yeah, they may work for companies, but eventually they try to buy their own trucks and they're actually independent business owners at that point. So it's a ladder that can be climbed. I will say truck drivers in the modern era are tragically underpaid, though.
Here to tell us more, Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. Mr. Secretary, those videos are terrifying. I mean, these individuals, they can't understand basic signs, can't speak English. These trucks are dangerous. We all kind of feel the difference on the highways today. At least I do. I drive a lot. What are you all doing to make sure these blue states can't wiggle out of this, especially given this new filing?
So Laura, really quickly, not only do they not speak English, many of them went to a sham driving school. So many of them aren't qualified. They don't have the skills and the knowledge to operate an 80,000-pound big rig on American roads. And so,
and pause it really quick. I want to go through this entire thing, but I want to say we have to remember Trump put up a solution here. And one of the big solutions were if you were driving truck in the military, they're automatically going to approve you to drive a big rig once you get out, which would be absolutely fantastic. And those are the kinds of people we want to get into those roles.
We are entitled to get all of the DMV files from all of the states. It goes back to the 80s. I've asked all the states to provide that information to me. As you mentioned, 22 states, liberal states, have sued me to make sure I can't get that information because they know that we're going to take illegals off American roads. And so what's happening here is you have these liberal states actually siding with an illegal truck driver over the safety of an American citizen. It shows how perverse these radical leftists have become. And all we're trying to do, listen, there's a great debate happening on immigration. You and I share the same opinion with President Trump. This is basic safety, making sure that your roads are safe. But just to take a look back, we've taken 26,000 vehicles out of service because the drivers don't speak English. We've taken 30,000 drivers off the roads because their licenses were illegally issued. We have partnered with ICE. We're doing sting operations over 2-day periods of time over multiple states. So we were in Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. We took 800 people off the road. And so what's happening is if you look back, there were people who were self-deporting. Well, that's right, but we did it with ICE, with Mark Wayne Mullen and I partnered on this. Yeah. We have people getting off the roads because they know we're coming for them. And we are not going to stop. President Trump is going to do everything he can to make sure when Americans go to Walmart or they go to church on Sunday.
Okay, you can leave it there. And something else I'd say here, there's going to be a real need for truck drivers, and I hope they don't try to fill that hole with automated trucks, especially on highways. They already have the program to get veterans into those positions. I'm glad America has that. Canada needs to get a similar program, but there is a lot of propaganda around truck drivers, and we can see why, and I'm sure the problem is actually there, but I want the solution to be getting real American citizens behind the wheels of those trucks and paying them well for those positions.
Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, I mean, the road to bad places is paved with good intentions or with worrying stories about factual things that are happening. And in blue states, them not wanting to release that information, coming down probably essentially to they don't want to lose their voters, number one, even if they're illegal. And number two, the self-unaliving empathy that surrounds a lot of the ideology that is baked into the states.
Well, what you would have to figure here is there's going to be a lot of checks outside of blue states. And when you're going across country, you're going to be able to get them when they get into red states. The problem is a large portion of truck drivers, because a lot of my friends were truck drivers, just drive city local truck driving, and they do the final leg of a lot of these deliveries.
But as you were mentioning, and as I was saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and one of those intentions might be to actually just get self-driving vehicles and actually just push forward this propaganda so people now start begging for it, just like digital ID, self-driving vehicles.
Well, this is going a step further than self-driving vehicles. Usually when you would need somebody that is certified to drive truck, now they're replacing a lot of those jobs with what's going on here. Let's take a look at this.
Yeah, Marnufo says, WTF, this is how Amazon moves trailers now. A powered spotter allows ordinary laborers to handle massive semi-trailers, no CDL required. Efficiency, thy name is Bezos.
And you can fast forward it a bit.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
What you're witnessing here is an Amazon worker using a powered trailer spotter. And with one of these machines, they can pick up and move one of these massive trailers all throughout the yard. And why are they doing this? Well, it's cheaper than having a truck driver with a CDL do it. So the labor cost, you can have a yard operator do this job for only about $19 an hour. And if you were to have a truck driver do it, it would cost you significantly more, and they would need licensing. So do you need licensing to operate one of these? And the answer is no. You generally do not need a CDL or any kind of special license to operate this machine. You may need one if it crosses like a public traffic area, but anybody that's using these things in like a yard, no license, no CDL. So Amazon figured out that you don't need to have a truck driver hook up the trailers and move it throughout the yard for much cheaper. You can pay somebody like $19 an hour. Or
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I don't know what the solution for this is, possibly to require a CDL for one of those machines, which would create local jobs, so truck drivers might not have to be away from their families for long periods of time as well. But underpaying people to do what a truck driver would normally do, I'm not for it in any way, shape, or form. And the next step of this is self-driving trucks, like I said before, and I'm definitely not in favor of that. Not because I don't think self-driving trucks aren't safe or something like that, but I want these blue-collar jobs to be protected. This is the #1 job career for most blue-collar men in America as well as Canada.
But let's not even just think about that little machine or thing, spotter, whatever it's called, I know, whatever it's called. But let's also think, I mean, eventually it's not going to be a human. It's going to be a little robot that can just do all of it by itself. I mean, they're already doing that in other countries. But let's pause, because thank you so much to Anya Zinsky. That's for the $10 super chat saying, quote, my brother is a truck driver and their company has lots of trips to the US from BC and the company can't get permits into the US. Canada has made a mess and wrecked lives of its people. By, again, the self-unaliving empathy, because they want to just hire and continue to ignore the very obvious issues that we see and tragedies that have happened and have made the news.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep standing up for truck drivers. There's certain issues like farmers, truck drivers that really hit close to home. And a lot of my family were truck drivers. A lot of my friends were truck drivers. And anytime I can highlight these issues, and we need to highlight these issues because AI and self-automation are coming after truck driving. And this is a very specific industry that really affects blue-collar men.
Exactly. But thank you so much, Anya Zinsky. And interesting what you say about your brother who is a truck driver. And again, it's not just with truck driving, but it's a great example to prove that because of the stupid, retarded decisions that Canada has made, well, now the U.S. is becoming less and less trusting of even the people coming over from Canada, because a lot of people take advantage of either their PRs or Canadian citizenship to go into the U.S. A lot of them not very nice people. Let's just put it that way.
Well, and I'll say something else. A good policy the United States might want to think of, and I know they've talked about it a little bit, is to not let Chinese electric vehicles cross over the Canadian border. The Canadian government is really poking the Americans in the eye by saying, oh, we're going to allow mass importation of Chinese electric vehicles. And I would just love to see if the Americans said, well, you can do whatever you want, but those vehicles aren't coming across the border even for day trips.
True.
We need to see a major change in education. And we have a couple articles later where teachers are bravely speaking up. So when that comes up, I mean, one teacher is in absolute tears, and my heart really went out to him.
But I mean, that SNL skit, and again, very prescient given that it's from a few years ago, it's almost literally what's happening not just on the left with the DSA and the insane people, but also on the insane, retarded, woke right.
Well, it's crazy.
They're all literally going for, I mean, it's not ISIS at this point, but basically.
Well, it's crazy to think 2015 was more than a decade ago at this point. This has been going on for a decade now.
Yeah. And again, premonitions.
Well, and it was actually going on for well over a decade, especially in academia. We're talking probably 30, 40 years at this point, but it just became extremely obvious in the last 10 years. I would say right around 2013, 2014 is when it came obvious to your average Joe.
And interestingly enough, I was going to mention this, but funny. What's the name of that Daily Wire guy? Jeremy Boring.
Yeah.
He has a new channel. I'm not a huge fan of his, and sometimes I disagree with him and his tactics, but he had a good and interesting video, I think it released today or yesterday, about America and a lot of the West kind of importing third worldness and actually now propagandizing with it as well.
Yeah.
And from sides that you wouldn't really expect it to be coming from, like Tucker, like Candace, like Alex Jones.
Well, and
the obvious radical leftists.
And also, this is why I always try to tell Americans, keep an eye on Canada, because what happens in Canada will come to America 5 to 10 years later. They're extremely woke. It's ingrained within their governmental system, within their legal system, whether it's the MAID program or other things. It goes to Canada, and then it seeps its way down.
But speaking of retardation, insanity, and premonitions, we have this from Spencer Pratt, who I still really want to get some sort of position somewhere doing something because he has good ideas. Spencer Pratt says, quote, Gavin Newsom confesses about high-speed rail, this train project that is going nowhere and is just wasting money or laundering money. This saying that, quote, this project is not going to materialize in our lifetime, even though it's been promised so much. Yet he continues to BS taxpayers about it after wasting our money on this bondongle.
This clip was
There we go.
And this clip was from 2014. And man, I don't know where he got this clip, but Gavin Newsom admits everything here. But he's kept this scam going for another decade. They just keep cashing in on this. And this is why I'm warning Canadians about their new high-speed rail. These high-speed rails end up being money pits. And it's not like the money shouldn't be able to be tracked, because the money is being spent within the country. We should demand transparency and accountability for projects that are being made within the country. I know a lot of money laundering happens because they send money out overseas and nothing's tracked as soon as it leaves the shores of America or Canada. But in this case, there needs to be some kind of oversight.
I was out there promoting a $33 billion project. I was out there promoting ridership that was 55% higher than the current projected ridership. I was there promoting a third of the money coming from the private sector, 25 to 33% from the federal government. I was out there promoting the fact that this would generate revenue and not cost taxpayers a subsidy. I was out there promoting it. And none of those things now are taking shape. It's a $68+ billion project. They just announced 2 months ago, went up another billion just for this new 130-mile first phase. It started with $33 billion. It went to 96. We value engineered it, so it's no longer quote unquote high speed rail. It's higher speed rail. We wildly overstated the ridership projections. We manipulated some of the revenue projections. There's only one true high speed rail system in the world that generates real profit. I thought there were two. And I remember when President of France was here a few months ago, I complimented him on being one of the two, and he laughed. And his ministers laughed. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, don't believe what you read about us generating profits on our high speed rail. The only one is Osaka that generates, and that's a different kind of concentration, urban concentration. So this is going to be a subsidy. The bonds, you double the cost of the bonds is the actual cost to the taxpayers of repaying them. I mean, it's a burden, politically speaking, candidly. I was there with Schwarzenegger and Tony Blair on the screen. I'll never forget it. Governor Pataki from New York State,
We can
all
leave it there,
celebrating.
and I will say, we're talking, this project just keeps going and racking up hundreds of billions of dollars, and he's admitting it there on camera. He knew in 2014, yet the hundreds of billions of dollars just keep rolling in. I'm sure they're lining his pockets, in my opinion.
But now let's go back to your comments. Michael Drader says that's why the Crowdgrass Confederation of Canada's passport will become less valuable in no time. It already is. I made a whole video about the worry of when Alberta becomes independent, what happens to your Canadian passport. The real matter of fact is that the Canadian passport has already lost a bunch of spots in the Henley Passport Index. It used to be at 3, sometimes at 2, sometimes at 4. Now it's at 7, and it continues to go down. And propaganda media outlets in Canada try to make that, and they come up with articles saying, ooh, Canada's still in the top 10. Well, it used to be in the top 3.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries, especially in Asia right now, pointing out they do not like Canadians traveling to their countries. Why? Because there's an influx of people pooping on the beach, as well as a list of other things that typically weren't behaviors of Canadians. They are now because of mass immigration. Canadian behavior is now becoming the behavior of the type of immigrants they allow into the country in mass. And the one country they're allowing in mass, far more than any other, we're talking around 60% of all of their immigration is from India, and they want to increase that. It looks like Mark Carney, when he went to make a deal with India, he was putting immigration in there as part of one of the fundamental principles that they want to get a lot of Indian students into the country and then put them into the fast track into permanent residency and eventually citizenship.
Third worldism, essentially. Option Trader says, I come in peace. Thank you for being here. And also today we're talking about the US, so you might feel a bit more comfortable. But again, I always say to anybody to comment and talk and give your opinion about any subject you want. That's what free speech is all about and why we have to protect it too. DeBilver says, hello Nat and Guy and everyone. Hello and thank you for being here. And Philip Vespa says, hello Nat and Guy. What type of Democrat insanity are we dealing with today? Many.
Well,
also,
I would say the DSA is the insanity of the Democratic Party. I said the whole thing is absolutely crazy, and the traditional Democrats just want to try to hide some of their craziness by saying, oh, we're getting rid of the DSA, we're getting rid of our craziness. No, there's craziness even in the traditional mind of the progressives there. But what can be really highlighted these days is the Democratic Socialists of America, which is socialism and communism. Then they're trying to repackage it right now for the midterms and the 2026 election. I think it's helping the Republicans immensely right now.
well, and again, remember, socialism is just communism light, or what happens before you go full on communist. But Philip Vespa continues, also have to apologize for my claim yesterday. All I saw was a thumbnail for Fringes, or the Unacceptable Fringes video. We'll own that L 100%. And then we kind of looked into it as well because we were curious after your comment. And yes, what Fringe was talking about was that he didn't like that Benny Johnson was once again repeating the claim of Alberta possibly becoming a state of the US, which is not the stated intention or what would benefit Alberta the most when it becomes independent. And it's not a really talking point that most Alberta independent supporters, if not basically any, actually claim.
Yeah, I ended up watching the Fringes video after. I like the Fringes video, but yeah, Benny Johnson was talking a lot about a post that went kind of viral about, and some of the post was about the 51st state. That's not what Alberta wants, not because it doesn't like the United States, but because every 4 or 8 years you tend to get a Democratic government into power, and they start undoing all the good policies that had previously been done.
And lastly, Philip Vespa says, now the PQ, or the Parti Québécois, is saying no referendum until after Trump leaves office. Why the sudden backpedal? That makes me scared for Quebec sovereigntists.
There's never going to be a sovereigntist election within Quebec now. If they really wanted sovereignty, they would have it when Trump's there, because Trump is willing to recognize these countries. Alberta realizes that, and I talk a lot about this, especially after this non-binding referendum. We're going to get a binding referendum. If we win both of those, there's going to be another hurdle to jump, and that is we may have to declare a unilateral declaration of independence, especially if the federal government does some funny business. And the only way that works is if Trump is in office or a J.D. Vance. That's why on this channel here, we support J.D. Vance and a Marco Rubio ticket, because I believe the federal government in Canada is going to try to draw out this independence process and make it as long as possible. And eventually, if we do have to make that declaration, I'm hoping it's J.D. Vance or Trump in office.
And you actually left that perfectly for me because now we're moving on to the J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Republicans segment.
I am your voice.
See what's going on with them.
And the dog going crazy in the other room.
Apologies for that, yes. But let's start with this from Ace saying, quote, when Landman speaks, you need to listen.
One moment here. I just want to point out Ace American Fire. Absolutely fantastic podcast. He focuses... Commentator, yeah, on YouTube. He's my favorite, I would say, American commentator at the moment. He's just getting a lot of recognition. His channel's just starting to grow, and he hasn't been co-opted yet, which I really appreciate. I've watched a lot of channels, and I've seen them being co-opted, and then I had to go look for new content creators. At the moment, Ace is my favorite.
Go follow and subscribe as well.
Yeah.
But yes, as when Landman speaks, you need to listen. Rapid Response 47 says, Secretary Wright at the Permian Basin in West Texas saying we can produce more oil and gas at less cost than we ever could before. In the past decade, oil production in this basin, America's largest oil field, has quadrupled. Natural gas production has grown sevenfold. And yet you don't really hear much about this.
Well, and it's absolutely fantastic, especially with the Venezuelan market starting to really open up. That's the exact kind of oil they refine in Texas. And it's the same kind of oil that's brought down from Alberta into Texas as well. So the oil is really flowing in the United States right now. And hopefully it stays flowing because God knows what's going to happen with the Strait of Hormuz at this point.
We can produce more oil and gas at less cost than we ever could before. That's grown American production. And the Permian Basin, where we are right now in West Texas, the production, when President Trump was first elected 10 years ago, since then, oil production in this basin, America's largest oil field, oil production has quadrupled. Natural gas production has grown sevenfold. And so this is about innovation, and this is about unleashing American energy. We can produce more.
Absolutely. And America has the right strategy, at least under Donald Trump. They do invest in oil and natural gas. This is what I've always said. And then leapfrog this green energy and go right into nuclear. Another thing is I'm starting to realize, yeah, there are benefits to green energy, but the benefits are for normal households that want to live off grid and stuff like that. You don't want to invest in green energy as an industrial sector to rely on your energy needs. We see what happens in places like Texas with the windmills when the weather gets too cold. We see what happens when a country's too cloudy. The energy is not consistent and it doesn't work. It actually has a much increased value overall.
We also see what happens in places like Europe or Canada that went full speed ahead with their carbon taxes and their net zeros, and now they're suffering because of it. Not only that, but did we play that Glenn Beck clip about what they discovered? Because he sent it to me, the guy sent it to me, and apparently in Europe now they're discovering that there's such heat waves and it's so hot now, which is not at all rare anyways, but it's getting so hot because apparently the air is now too clean. They clean the air too much. Some climate scientists, actual experts, as they say, came out with analysis.
Let's leave it there because I tried to explain it the other day and I got caught up. I watched it back on the replay and it was very confusing. What I will say is go watch that Glenn Beck clip. It was absolutely fantastic. What they're realizing is the more carbon you take out of the air, the faster temperatures actually heat up.
Yeah. Again, stupid consequences of clearly stupid choices. But Rapid Response also says, quote, Stephen Miller on the socialist infiltration of the Democrat Party. This is a struggle for the survival of America. These actions collectively would bring America to its knees. It would cripple us. It would crush us. It would destroy everything 250 years of patriots fought, bled, and died for.
Yeah, and he speaks very plainly, very frankly here. We have to remember what will happen if the Democrats do get in 2028. Donald Trump on a global level has made massive strides, maybe more than any other modern U.S. president in my lifetime. Some Americans might not see it, but I, as a foreigner kind of looking at the world, my God, the impact he's made in Central America, South America, in Europe, and other countries, trying to get these countries to actually kind of stand up on their own 2 feet, develop their own militaries, be self-sufficient, I think is absolutely fantastic. A lot of these countries don't like it, but if they can make it through the growing pains, it's going to be good for them.
But also within the U.S. itself, too. And I mean, that is why we're seeing a ramping up of a lot of the plans and a lot of the ideas that they were trying to slow roll towards into the population, especially in the U.S. And now they're having to kind of go full force ahead because they see the continuation of the Trump administration and what Trump has already been able to succeed at continuing.
Well, what I'd say is the majority of the propaganda comes at Trump, especially for the midterms and the 2028 election, on what's going on in the United States. And they try to demonize it and shape a narrative that just isn't the case. The U.S. economy is doing far better than any other economy when you compare them directly. And that includes the Chinese economy.
But let's listen to Stephen Miller.
This is a struggle for the survival of America. It's that serious. It's that real. What you talked about, abolishing police, abolishing borders, abolishing ICE, abolishing fossil fuels, gutting the Department of War, these actions collectively would bring America to its knees. It would cripple us. It would crush us. It would destroy everything 250 years of patriots fought, bled, and died for. To the people at home, everything that makes your life better, Donald Trump is delivering on and fighting for. Record tax relief, zero illegal immigration, the largest reduction in murder since 1900, the lowest violent crime rates that have ever been recorded, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, rebuilding the military, taking the fight to the drug cartels to keep fentanyl from killing our families and our children. Issue after issue, President Trump is fighting for our families, and what do they want to do? They want to hand over our nation to illegal aliens, criminals, jihadists, and communists. This isn't the old debates we used to have 20, 30 years ago, Sean, where we're saying, oh, do you want taxes at 30% or 33%? This is a debate between people who fundamentally hate America, hate Americans, and want to sell this country to their friends for scraps. That's how real this is. When you nominate candidates who say
okay,
that
and
they
you can
want,
leave it there. And I would say absolutely fantastic statement. And when he talks about drug cartels, this isn't like Reagan's war on drugs. They're trying to go. They're actually going after these cartels. We live here in Mexico now. I follow South American politics fairly closely, and he's getting cooperation through a lot of these governments that have voted in right-wing governments now. They're on board with the Shield of the Americas, and there is real progress being made there, as well as no tax on tips and things like that. A lot of these blue states are trying to put bills in, so those checks never actually make it to those people, because that will sway votes, and they know it. But this is something that should have been made a long time ago in the United States. And another thing that needs to happen is no property taxes, period. Ron DeSantis is doing his best to accomplish that in Florida. That would be one of the first places that happens, but they need to take that policy across the United States. And Alberta in Canada, once it gets its independence, needs to look at some of those same policies. No taxes if you own your property.
And not only that, but with, for example, the drug cartels you were mentioning, or the actually doing something, the security, safety in other countries as well, so they can cooperate better as allies, I would say, and as the Shield of the Americas. Here in Mexico, for example, they're also going after the corrupt politicians and uncovering and blocking visas and actually doing the things that our own very own governments cannot do, so they can actually start working with the country itself and having an ally like the U.S. And as much as us here in Mexico and a lot of people in Canada hate to admit it, the U.S. is the most important country right now in this continent, and probably in the Western Hemisphere and the world, but also because of the ideology that they've been able to maintain, and the freedom forward ideology that they've been able to fight for and keep, and fighting against communism all the way from the 50s to now.
Well, if the Western Hemisphere doesn't want to be chopped up like a chop shop and turned into a Chinese factory, it needs to get on board with the Shield of the Americas, period. Let's go into the next two stories, and these were actually my favorite two stories of the day, and they're interrelated. Much like we talked about the truckers within one of our last segments, now we're going to focus on the teachers here. And man, this was absolutely heartbreaking, especially the second clip.
And again, it's not to say that communism and stupid ideas haven't also infiltrated into the US, but at least now we can talk about it on social media platforms from the US. Marinufo says, quote, "This teacher quit her job because of DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion madness, saying, quote, district leaders asked me to fabricate grades for a parent who sat in the office for hours until her daughter's failing grades were changed. It creates false entitlement."
Yeah, well, they've gone completely past this now, and they've just gotten rid of grades in a lot of schools, whether it's high schools, elementary schools, even some Ivy League universities have gotten rid of grades. Harvard's bringing back grades at this point. Places like Canada and other places around the world are going down this path as well, and people just aren't speaking up. They're just going along, and now it's integrated into the system permanently. So America needs to pay attention. What's going on around the world, and their own teachers are blowing the whistle right now. They need to listen as American citizens, and we need to make the changes. The changes can't be made just by this one administration. It needs to be followed up by a second administration that's going to go a few steps further. So hopefully in 2028, it's a a Vance-Rubio ticket that can really make the changes that need to be made.
But also, if you can, homeschool your children.
I was Teacher of the Year at John F. Kennedy Middle School in Antioch this past year, and Blue Ribbon Teacher of the Year for the district. What you have in front of you right now is my resignation letter. I resigned in May. You can read those 3 pages at your leisure, but I've heard a lot of positive data in this meeting, and I just wanted to give you some facts from my firsthand experience. So first, district leaders asked me to fabricate grades for a parent who sat in the office for hours until her daughter's failing grades were changed. It creates false entitlement. What happens when these kids lie, cheat, and cry their way through school and end up as future doctors, police, or politicians? When will you protect the future of our society? Second, that same parent has harassed over 30 teachers. Teachers have filed police reports, and entire school districts have had, or entire schools have had restraining orders against her. Yet she's still allowed on school property, showing up to field trips her child didn't earn, and filming other students. When will you stop prioritizing parents' feelings over the safety of our teachers and our students? I heard you also mention that we're closing gaps in teacher vacancies. I want the public to know that many of those are filled with uncertified teachers. My third point, HR withheld money from my employee paycheck as well as many others. They took $500 from me specifically, and it put me behind on my mortgage. And then they sent out an email saying that they had to do it to pay other employees. When will you pay teachers what they are owed? My fourth point, the news reports that behavioral issues are down. They are not. We are simply banned from reporting them, forcing us to keep disruptive students in the classroom. Statistics are being skewed to protect the district, not our children. Our children cannot read and write. They cannot do basic math. And we spend 40 hours a week with these students, so we know them better than the district and those fake numbers. Please stop undermining our professional decisions, because honestly, it's breaking the efficiency and it's giving HOA quality. So Dr. Battle, my question to you
Thank you. The time.
Okay.
And of course, they don't want to hear the actual question at the end, but that is one hell of a good teacher. I don't want to paint all teachers with a good brush, because the teachers union right now is absolutely horrible. And this is one of the big things that need to be reformed in the United States. But there are a few good teachers, but even the teachers union is setting up a system in order to certify teachers and hire teachers that just aren't qualified and fit into this woke ideology and want to present that within a classroom to very vulnerable minds.
And again, it is the difference between equality of outcomes versus equality of opportunities. And now, right now, they want to make everybody equally bad, because you can't make everybody equally good. But when you say you're prioritizing equity over equality or just meritocracy and common sense, well, then you have to bring everybody else down, and you have to start listening to the third worldism of a parent going in trying to tell a teacher how to do their job and being allowed to and continuing to be allowed to go on campus. But I will say that is an example of something that didn't happen at my school here in Mexico, but in other schools I would hear that parents and even children could go into their teacher's class and say, oh, please, please, please help me out, or actually just bribe them or pay something to get a higher grade or a passing grade at least. And that is something that happens in countries that don't have these kinds of standards or don't have the mechanisms to actually have these kinds of standards and to really value meritocracy, which is what has gotten the US to the point where it's at right now. And now they want to destroy it all.
Well, maybe not right now, but it got to meritocracy worked to a point, and now they're driving away from that, which is absolutely ridiculous. It worked so well for hundreds of years. Well, why are you turning your back on meritocracy?
Because meritocracy goes against socialism and eventual communism. And that is the point where we were trying to get to. Well, the US and Canada is trying to get to. Mayor Newful says, quote, graduating illiterate has become the new norm in American public schools. It's been for a while. A teacher broke down in tears describing what he's seeing in the classroom, and we see millions of videos like this every day. I'm sure you've run across them on your own social media. His seniors, kids about to graduate, couldn't fill in 4 simple words on a basic assignment. The correlation between reading levels and incarceration has been documented for decades, yet the country acts surprised by where so many of them end up. And again, it is not just happening in the US, it's happening in many countries, but in the US, it's particularly worrying as well.
Well, and it's a very interesting contrast of 2 teachers kind of blowing the whistle here. The last lady was very angry, very analytical, directly to the point, and this is just an emotional plea for help for the basic school system and education system within America, and I would say furthermore, around a lot of the world.
A lot of this was started when the US decided to get rid of phonics, and they started implementing critical reading. Not critical thinking, critical reading, where you have to insert yourself and actually just think about the ideology of what you're reading instead of actually learning to read.
Yeah, these are becoming ideological indoctrination centers rather than classrooms where you're actually learning important skills for the future.
These kids are leaving high school and going to college
and they couldn't fill in 4 words. 4 words. I literally broke down in the middle of class. This is only day 2. And I have seniors who simply cannot read and seniors who cannot write. They can reason. They have the ability to defend their reasoning if it's talking to their homeboy, but applying that to a written text, 2 paragraphs, and they couldn't do it. Our young black men, our young brown men, our young black girls, and our young brown girls, these kids are leaving.
But all of them, and because of how he phrased it there, I unfortunately have to say that maybe he is also part of the problem, because by just focusing on, oh, it's the black, it's the brown, it's the blah, 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 and focusing on race and color, well, that's what's been happening for the longest time. By trying to get them ahead and help them get ahead, they stopped actually giving them the opportunity to show their actual talent and actually go for the meritocracy route, rather than just handing down and handing over whatever they needed and wanted to get those grades up, to get them to the place where they needed to be, without actually knowing what they're doing. But
let's go into some comments if we can.
Yes, hold on 1 second. Michael Drader says POTUS 47 or President Trump is the best political troll in my lifetime. And Michael Drader also says, love to see them choke out China's war machine. Only so many infantry you can send like army ants without war material. Yes. Oh, it's just me. Okay. Michael Drader says, yes, no child left behind. Later it became no teacher left standing. And we are seeing a lot of teachers also wanting to give up on their profession, or literally just giving up on their profession, because, and it's not just the American public school system or the Canadian public school system, but also the fact that parents have apparently forgotten as well how to discipline children, and schools have forgotten how to discipline children, and everybody has forgotten that discipline actually does help. Now, I don't mean hitting your children, etc., but discipline in terms of expecting something from these young people. That is what they want. They want to be able to prove that they can do things. How do I know this? Because I worked in 2 different high schools in Vancouver, and nothing was ever expected from these kids, so they never learned to actually do things. And whenever I tried to instill discipline in them, well, it was shocking to them. But at the end, even though I was pretty much hated by everybody because I was so strict, in the end, when I left, they were all thanking me, because I was basically the only one that was trying to make them better, not just withstanding everything that they wanted to do.
I would say teachers are being replaced by woke ideologic warriors, and this is happening through the certification process. I was looking at some of the certifications specifically in Canada, and it's almost a purity test to make sure you have the right ideology before you get your certification.
Option Trader says, Alberta will never be our 51st state. Trump says things for effect, and he starts conversations. Alberta, as a free nation, will be a stronger message to the globalists than our newest state.
Well, and I think Trump is going to send a message to the rest of the world, and especially Canada, if Alberta does get its independence, or if J.D. Vance is in office at the time, and they're going to have a very strong zero tariff relationship with Alberta to show Canada and a lot of other countries, you're better off doing business and being our ally. And Alberta doesn't have the same problem most of the rest of Canada does. They don't have ideological differences. We actually align with Trump and the Republicans in most senses. I would say almost all senses.
Option Trader also says people jump on Trump's words at face value because they've been trained to do so as well. Always take the president seriously, not always literally. He creates conversations, and that's his modus operandi.
Absolutely.
But it serves them to take them seriously, because then they can create shock value.
But he is doing the hard work that needs to be done to push back against the globalists like nobody else has ever done before. And this is the thing. The globalists are trying to wait Trump out. It is obvious. A lot of countries looked at their financial situation and realized they couldn't, so they cut a deal. Mark Carney, on the other hand, is trying to lead the woke alliance of globalist countries over the next 2 years, thinking they can get a Democratic president in. And you have to believe there is hundreds of billions of dollars of money laundering going around right now in order to influence not only the midterms, but especially the 2028 election.
Villavespa says, who would have thought taking out the coolant of carbon would cause the atmosphere to overheat? You didn't need a scientist to tell you this.
Yeah, and it was and they've known this for a long time, and this research study has been done over and over again. A similar study was initially done, I believe, by Benjamin Franklin, but similar studies were repeated over and over. They've known for a long time, I guess, if you take carbon out of the air, it actually increases temperatures even faster, and this is why the EU right now is increasing at a 1 degree faster rate than the rest of the world. And it's almost like a perfect scam if they weren't exposed because, we're just not doing enough. We're heating up even faster. We need to get more carbon out of the air. As you get more carbon out of the air, it heats up more. And then what's their big solution? Carbon taxes. Let's make your average citizen pay for everything.
Option Trader says he's looking long-term. Independent Alberta, the permanent Arctic trade route that's predicted to be open by 2028. Venezuela, Mexico, Greenland to secure the Arctic route. When Alberta leaves, Saskatchewan will eventually follow, and Canada, as we know, will never be the same. All of that will potentially secure this hemisphere for centuries. I'm not being hyperbolic. I know I sound like a broken record, but if you read the national security strategy that was published in November by the Trump administration, it is all outlined in there. A lot of people that continue to say, what is Trump doing? He's crazy. Venezuela, now Mexico, now he's doing this in Greenland. It's all part of the plan to exactly secure the hemisphere and secure the influence and the cooperation that the U.S. can get by also helping other countries, increase themselves.
What we're going to see,
themselves better.
What we're going to see here is if we can follow the Trump administration up with another administration like a JD Vance that's going to follow through on a lot of these policies and see them through. We're going to either see Central or South America become the new Europe. It's going to be the new partnership, and everything is going to revolve around that. The European Union is so far gone now ideologically. Trump will just build a new Europe, and that will lie within, I believe, Central and South America.
I mean, it already looks like.
Well, and it looks like a lot of that is revolving around Argentina right now, and there is a lot of money going into Argentina to build up new cities, a lot of tech money going in there. A lot of high-profile Americans are now getting secondary citizenship into Argentina so they can invest in Argentina.
And Villavespa says, how did that teacher think current Democrat politicians got elected? Cheating and scamming your way through education has been going on forever. But now it's more and more blatant. But again, I am a huge advocate of homeschooling, or at least finding solutions that don't have to always do with the public education system.
Yeah, the teachers' unions in the United States are becoming a real problem. Both those teachers that were speaking up against this look like they were a little bit older. So I don't think a lot of people realize how corrupt a lot of these teacher unions and how the teacher certification process has been completely corrupted, not just in the United States, but in Canada and a lot of these other woke ideological countries like the EU and the UK.
Well, and it happened because of the institutional capture. So it became kind of a revolving door. So the student goes to university to study education. The education department was one of the first to be captured by the wokes and the communists and the socialists, because they know that if they can implement these ideas to children when they're young and get teachers to do that for them, well, then they have kind of like a card-carrying member for the rest of, at least until they notice how insane these policies are. And then from there, these teachers go to the teachers unions, go to the public schools, start educating and infiltrating those systems, and then again, revolving door. And the more and more they go through this system and this loop, the woker they get, the more insane they get. So at this point, the young teachers themselves don't even know how to read properly, let alone teach how to read to younger people.
Well, they don't need to teach. Their goal is no longer to teach these kids how to read or how to do math. What they want to teach them is how to ideologically think.
Ideological compliance, essentially. And students are rebelling because students do notice that when it's the teachers that are telling you what to do and the adults that are telling you what to do, you usually go the other way. Option Trader says everything that teachers said was made public in the New York City Board of Education since 2002, and the teachers union went overboard to bury any voices speaking out. Exactly, and says No Child Left Behind, and that also too was one of the most destructive policies in U.S. history, and now the strange fruit it has borne is out for all to see. But not to read, because many people can't even read.
Well, and one of the big things with No Child Left Behind is you would get funding per student, but only if they graduated. So this was a big thing why schools don't want to fail children.
Yeah, and lowering the standards. Again, let's make everybody dumber, not help people rise to the occasion and teach them. Option Trader says American math and reading test scores were among the last in the first world nations for 30 years now.
Yeah.
And that is even a joke that we've been saying here in Mexico for the longest time. I mean, a lot of our education is still very strict and disciplined, not so much now. It's getting woker. But for the longest time, Mexico was even doing better than the US and even Canada. I mean, I have friends that went to Canada that are from Mexico but went to high school in Canada, but they had a Mexican education first. A lot of the things that they were teaching kids in high school in Canada that they were struggling with, my friends had already learned years ago in Mexico, which is insane. But on that note, and on the note of infiltration and institutional capture, let's actually get into the communists, the DSA, and America First, which are closer than you think.
9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
And let's start with this from Benny Johnson. Oh, hold on. Saying, quote, insane. Oh, speaking of Benny Johnson. Insane Democrat Socialists of America member Cliff Connolly admits they hate the Constitution, calls it the obstacle socialists must get over to have a revolution. Well, that's why the Constitution is technically there, so this doesn't happen.
Yeah, and these little online think tanks of DSA members outing themselves are absolutely fantastic, and I just wanted to show some of it. I usually show the more high-profile DSA members, but it's these little cretins behind the scenes that actually blow the whistle on what they actually want, and they want no more Senate. They want to completely dismantle democracy in the form laid out by the U.S. Constitution, and they believe they can do that by changing the Constitution itself.
Goal. So the two things that we're famous for is our commitment to a program and our hatred of the United States Constitution. And what the program does is it gives us a roadmap to revolution, and it gives us the obstacle that we finally will have to get over to have a revolution, which is the United States Constitution, the basis of the United States government. And what the minimum maximum program specifically, what that format specifically gives us is that roadmap. It gives us the minimum circumstances under which we would be able to take power and govern, and it gives us the maximum program, which is the goals that we're actually aiming for. It also clarifies democracy as both the end goal and as part of the process to get there ensures the internal party democracy that we want to see in DSA. So it really wraps up the revolutionary tradition of democracy that I think socialism and abolitionism in the United States have always been a part of, and aims at a future that we can live in as a human species. Because I think absent a revolutionary democratic socialist republic in North America, we may not have a livable future.
And you can leave it there. And what I will say is, yeah, the minimum they want to do, they know they have to pitch themselves in a minimalistic way in order to get elected, but their maximalist goals, they try to hide the best they can. But they've been talking about them for years now, so it's hard to hide the sugar. It's already in the pancake mix there.
And what's crazy is when they're telling you who they are, believe them. For the longest time, the Democrats were saying, no, but that's not us. That's not what we're after. It literally is, and you let them, again, with the institutional capture and the march to the institutions, which is what the communists did as well.
And you have to realize...
You let them in.
You have to realize they're saying, they literally said they hate the Constitution. Yeah. The American Constitution is the best system that we have right now. It is the gold standard. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. We're talking a lot about this right now within Alberta and Alberta independence, but it's really the gold standard. If you're going to try to form a new country, you either want to start with the gold standard or try something different. But there's nothing else on earth that works as good as that right now.
And we've already seen examples of this failing. We've already seen examples of how socialism, communism, revolution never actually turns out well, but they don't like to talk about those examples.
Well, you can look to places like Canada, the EU. They thought they had free speech. Well, now hate speech laws are completely trumping that. You do no longer have free speech in a lot of these Western countries. As a matter of fact, most Western countries. And as far as private property rights go, everybody thought they had those in Canada. Now that's in a major question.
Mm-hmm. But next, Kayleigh McEnany says, you can't welcome socialist communists into the tent. They will burn it down, because that's what they like to do. You can't welcome socialists and communists into the caucus, because they will destroy it. The broad caucus that Hakeem Jeffries envisions is unworkable when the people you're welcoming in profess support for policies that are at odds with the United States Constitution by wanting to destroy it, which we just saw.
Yeah, and she was a fantastic press secretary when she was there with her big binder, and any question that came up, she just snapped right back. I know the current press secretary just stepped down to take care of her children. It would be nice to see Kayleigh
McEnany
come back as press secretary. It's going to be hard to follow that up. They've had two very good press secretaries in a row now.
But, you know, I listened to Hakeem Jeffries, and you cannot have it both ways. You cannot have a broad caucus with communists that are very much at odds with the foundation of our governing system. When the DSA has a platform of getting rid of the Senate, getting rid of the Supreme Court, getting rid of the presidency, I'm not using hyperbole there. That's the new platform. You cannot have those views in your caucus because they're at odds with the foundation of our country and the great document that is the U.S. Constitution. And, you know, when I spoke to House Speaker Mike Johnson, he said the barbarians are in the gate. And what he was meaning by that is you are having these ultra-left progressives, the ones I'm describing, winning in primaries across the country. So a part of this broad caucus will be Chevalier, who used the American flag as a napkin. Those are her words. In this broad caucus is Claire Valdez. She looks to be on her way to win her race. She said, solidarity forever, abolish ICE, free Palestine, organize your union, join the DSA. That was after she won that she said that. In this broad caucus is Malat Kiros. Malat Kiros was asked if 9/11 was inevitable. She said inevitable in the sense that we destabilized a lot of the Middle East, which led people to believe that another act of violence was the only response. Those are people that should not be welcome in the caucus. And the Blue Dog Democrats, absolutely, those are more reasonable Democrats, but they're extinct. The Blue Dog Democrat is an extinct species. There was a promise to America, and all these moderate Democrats were asking was to sign on to capitalism, safety, fiscal responsibility, effective governance, common purpose, and patriotism. They got just over a dozen signatures. Those are the only people in the Democratic caucus that would sign on to that. You have to litigate this issue because, as Speaker Johnson said, communism is at odds with the American system. It begins with the premise that there is no God, that the state is effectively the God. And those people aren't welcome in the tent, they'll burn down the tent. Not welcome in the caucus, they'll tear down the caucus.
And here's the thing, there is no morality left in the Democratic Party. They traded it in for preferences, and they are having a tough time to say our preferences are better than your preferences because there's no underlying non-moving foundation like in the Republican Party, which is anchored by Christianity, I would say overall, at least the morality of Christianity, which all Western society at one point was. They're trying to unhook this with wokeness right now.
But again, they're having a taste of their own medicine. They allowed all of this to come in. They allowed it to fester because they thought some of the things were good ideas. They thought some of the things would make them at least appear more empathetic and like they're better people. And like, I mean, the left has always had that kind of foundation and that lack of morality and lack of God. But when you start turning the state into God and thinking that that is the best solution, well, now you can't really wash away the fact that you welcomed that and you opened the door. It was the Democrats themselves that saw an opportunity, especially with young people who are stupid enough to think that these are good ideas. So they would vote for them, and now they can't get rid of all of these insane retards.
Let's not whitewash the Democrats' ideas. They're saying there's blue-collar Democrats, this and that. I watch a ton of these think tanks where these blue-collar Democrats want to get rid of these DSA members, and they strategize on YouTube all day long for hours and hours. And the thing is, when they say, well, why don't we like this policy? Well, we say, well, we do like that policy. We just don't want to go as far as the DSA, meaning they want to completely defund and get rid of ICE. The DSA wants to completely defund, get rid of ICE, all police officers, as well as all prisons. The DSA has the exact same policies as the Democrats. They just go a few steps further. And if you give the Democrats another 10 years, eventually they'll get there too. They'll get progressive enough. They'll have the exact same policies. The DSA is just moving at too fast of a pace for them. They want control back within their traditional power base.
And we saw it happening in Canada for the past 15 years. We've already seen this movie played over and over again. And it's crazy that, again, when you can watch hours and hours of content, which sometimes you do, of these DSA think tank retards talking about these kinds of things, it's right on their webpage as well. And people are surprised, a lot of Democrats are surprised, or classical liberals, when you actually tell them what these people are thinking, but they're telling you themselves. They already have it out there. And the fact that a lot of young people, but also a lot of just regular people, are agreeing more and more with this should be worrying to more than just the Republicans that are already against all these ideas anyways. But next, speaking of worrying, Cinema Shogun says, WTF, Candace Owens is now being cheered on by popular left-wing activists and streamers like Hassan Piker. It's not the first time. Even he isn't in denial that Tyler Robinson murdered Charlie Kirk. He knows her conspiracies are fake, but he still supports them. Why? Because they're on the same side.
Well, and I've said from day one, I believe the America First wing and the DSA wing, if they're expelled from both the Republican and Democratic parties, will end up linking up. I think they have a long-term strategy for this as well. There's a path of certain fundamental based policies that they agree on, and I think they're going to use that, whether it's the anti-war, anti-Israel, and there's about 6 other policies that they can say, well, this is a fundamental platform. They're going to run on hope and change like Obama, but also they're going to go a step further and try to run on unity. They want to put a pretty bow and a pretty package on a box of shit.
But also, let's remember, or let's try to think of who might be funding or at least giving these ideas to these both seemingly completely opposite sides, and why they're coming together on very specific issues and against very specific countries, and I would even say religions.
Well, they're trying to link up very specific voter demographics. So, and it's being very obvious. They're trying to unite certain non-denominational Christians with Muslims, saying there's a lot of similarities here. They divided all these different people into intersectionality. Now they want to link up certain voter blocks so they can get elected and gain power.
I wouldn't say that I'm on her side on this issue. I am let's just say I'm spiritually on the sidelines on this. Because, like, on the one hand, my brain tells me something entirely different than what my heart is championing, if you know what I mean, okay? If you're picking up what I'm putting down. On the one hand, I want to be logical. I want to be rational about this case. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking to myself, I can't speak out against this queen. I mean, I can't speak out against this queen because this is a queen that successfully and single-handedly undermined the Republican initiative to martyrize Charlie Kirk and use that example to crack down on political dissent. She dropped a grenade on the discourse. So I'm with her. It's hard. It's hard for me. My brain says, no, it's probably Tyler Robinson, but my heart says, go, Candace, go. Keep cooking.
And you can leave it there. And a lot of the people on, I would say, the Republican side or the America First side there are really exposing themselves. That side that I believe if they do make a run and try to make a third party, you're going to see them link up with the DSA. But Alex Jones, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, they're just way out there now. They're much like the DSA of the right, and it's becoming very, very obvious.
But there's also been clues and breadcrumbs as to the change of hearts of a lot of these big commentators, and at one point, even big thought leaders of both Republicans, but MAGA, but America First. And it's interesting that a lot of these views that they're having that make no sense are converging amongst themselves, and they're making sense when you look at them in all of them are saying very similar things and very similar things against certain issues.
Well, and I wouldn't even say all the ideas are bad. They start off with a kernel of truth, which you can agree, what you may agree with, but then they'll expand out and expand out and expand out until you're in absolute crazy land. And are they actually going to deliver on these policies if they get power? Absolutely not. It's going to be much like how a Jason Kenney or a Danielle Smith was in Alberta when they got power. They said all the populist things, but when they actually got there, they completely flipped.
But also, speaking of the either handling or funding of these commentators and these thought leaders that used to be on the right, I will say now they're on the retarded right, let's think of who is benefiting cui bono, as Tim Pool said today about Alex Jones, which we're going to go into in a minute. Who benefits from all of these people and all of these talking points that they're now espousing that make no sense? Again, a lot of them being almost pro-jihadist, I would say, or almost a very radical view of what should happen or not happen in America, and who would benefit from all of this and who could be funding all of this, what regions or what countries would benefit from the hatred that these people espouse against others.
Yeah, again, I'm going to say it's not all craziness because a lot of people do get sucked down that rabbit hole. And where it usually starts for both the DSA and the retarded right, it starts with anti-war. And not that anti-war is a wrong stance to have, but that's how they start there with them. And that's usually the thing they get sucked in on. And then they move out from there until you realize it's just a bunch of nonsense. But it did have a kernel of truth in the beginning.
And again, that's the important part. That's how they get you. But speaking of someone that went completely off the rails in the past few days, Ace says, quote, "My views are up, Alex. Maybe people are just tired of your grift, or maybe X cleaned the bots." Because Alex Jones has been very worried and even fighting with Tim Pool about this, saying, "Red alert, live shows on X see 90% reduction in viewers after change in algorithm. Are we witnessing mass censorship or just a huge bug in the system?" And I will have to agree with Tim Pool, who made a whole video about this today, because then Alex started fighting with him regarding this issue. But initially, Tim Pool had told Alex Jones, maybe it's because you, for the longest time, was a big supporter of Trump and was a big supporter of the MAGA movement, and et cetera, and suddenly you shifted. And of course, if your audience, you basically built your audience up on people that supported that, and now you go completely on the opposite side, well, you lose some audience, and Alex Jones just completely crashed out on that point.
Well, I used to watch Alex Jones a lot. I actually still watch him once in a while to try to keep up on what direction he's going and see what kind of crazy land he's kind of in. A few weeks ago, I would say it was about 2 months ago now, he was saying, within the next 3 weeks, we're going to have a full-on draft in America, blah, 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 blah. And it was obvious that Iran war was never going to really be boots on the ground there. They were looking for a way out. Obviously, it's going to continue, but if we can go up to the top there for a quick second. And again, I just want to recommend Ace American Fire, the best American content creator out there right now. And let's go into what Alex Jones says here a little bit.
Elon Musk is the free speech trailblazer, not just in America, but worldwide. So with the huge censorship we've seen in the last 48 hours, I don't believe he's behind it. That's why I'm firing the bat signal right now at Elon Musk to find out what the hell's going on X and to correct this problem. We're counting on you, Elon. Any way you slice it, there is massive censorship happening on X right now. Whether it's intentional or by accident, the effect is a wet blanket across the board. Starting Friday afternoon, they changed their rules and algorithm. They claim to allow external links, not penalize people. Great, but that's not what this is. It is taking us from hundreds of thousands or millions of live viewers to a couple thousand. Most people that are flooding us with private messages and emails say they can't even click on it and see the feed.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I'll say again, I used to watch Alex Jones, and I stopped watching that, and I stopped watching him. And he used to go on some really, I would say, he would go down a lot of conspiracy theories and rabbit holes. So he has to really go outside the bounds in order for you to stop following him. Mm-hmm. But he really has. He's literally flipped on a lot of his opinions and things like that. I used to absolutely love Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson. I used to watch Candace Owens as well. And now they're just completely off reservation.
And again, not just with China, but we've seen a lot of other countries that want to destabilize America or that hate America and want to wage war against it, maybe even ideological one, now taking advantage of social media bots. But I don't think it's just that. It's also the thought leaders that at one point did lead the minds of a lot of Americans and did actually want to present a different version of journalism or wanted to present truth when actual censorship was going on. And now they've seen that it's very useful to be able to capture those, just like they captured the institutions, and use them as these loudspeakers.
What you still see is Candace Owens getting massive numbers, but she didn't completely flip-flop like an Alex Jones. His audience went to him for something else. So I could see why his viewership is actually falling off the way that it has.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes when content creators do say like, oh, well, our views are down X, Y, Z, it might be because their content is also gone down. But let's go back to your comments. Thank you so much to Sean for being a member for 3 months.
Thank you.
And says, it's all nonsense. Is it China, Qatar, or the Club of Rome? I would say maybe even all of them.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think they're just changing their minds all of a sudden, all by themselves. Especially Jones, who is in a pretty dire financial situation after the whole court case that happened, and when they took away his business and his life's work. Well, now he might be in a desperate point, which is why it was such a radical shift almost as soon as he left or he had to leave his old business.
Well, nobody's watching mainstream media anymore, so a lot of this money is going to flow into independent content creators, and they're paying for their opinions right now. It's obvious at this point. And I'm not talking about their audience. I'm talking about foreign governments and political parties. You can see when a content creator becomes captured, their opinions very often switch or flip, and they try to justify them. But the justifications very often don't make sense compared to what they used to say. This is why I primarily always look for new content creators that aren't so big, that haven't been bought off at this point.
And it happens on a dime, and that is why it becomes so obvious eventually. But I will also say that with a lot of these bigger content creators, they're allowed to change their mind, but usually when they can't fully justify it, or they just say, stop asking me questions, that's just the way it is now, that's where you can tell. And Yazinski says, I had to fight with teachers to hold my son back because he was not ready to move to the next grade. And that's insane to think of, because before it was teachers that were fighting with parents, or teachers that actually cared enough about the students to notice when they needed to be held back or when they needed a different kind of assistance.
Yeah, that's a good
Go ahead.
That's a good parent giving tough love at that point, though, and the school system lacks that now. Mm-hmm. It's almost up to parents to give that tough love.
By which I mean both should be should be helping with the discipline. But Sean says, I am seeing my own town degrade in real time. I'm very worried about it. You wouldn't believe the lowlives that have flooded a small Oregon town. Every furry Fenty exploder motorhome.
Yeah, I've lived in a lot of places and I've seen it happen over and over again. And when I wasn't politically active or I didn't know politics too well, I didn't understand what was going on. I just thought it was the general degradation of society. Once I started becoming politically active, it was very obvious. It was a lot of these progressive, woke, socialist, communist policies. They have massive effects on society. I've lived all over the place. I've lived in California. I watched it degrade before my eyes. I lived in British Columbia. I watched that degrade before my eyes. Vancouver, Canada, specifically. When I lived in California, it was Long Beach, California, as well as Orange County. I watched degenerate. I also lived in Washington State for a little while, and that was went more than almost any other place I lived. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Sean also says, whatever happened to Alex Jones's old business? They spent millions on what? On the lawsuit. He got sued because of the Sandy Hook opinions that he had, and they essentially took him to town in court and didn't let him present his side, and then they just handed down the verdict, and he owed how much?
It was the largest awarded in history against a single citizen. I will say this: I used to really like Alex Jones. I followed that trial completely. There's an old video on our channel where I was talking about that when I wasn't very good at sitting in front of a camera. I'm still not that good, but I will say that was a complete modern day free speech lynching against Alex Jones. It was a travesty what happened in that trial. He should have had the right to state the opinions that he did. They wanted to make an example out of him. That being said, where the path Alex Jones is going down now, it's just too much for me.
Yeah. Option Trader says, lots of black teachers said nothing, only that they needed charter schools instead of saying all students need better educational standards.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just black or brown students. It's all students.
Yeah. DeBilver says, Guy, 1,000% agree. Not sure on what at this point, but thank you.
Everything, everything.
Sure.
You need to get on that. You need to get on that ship.
No. Option Trader says President Trump dealt the teachers union an insurmountable blow by dismantling the Department of Education, and they all went insane after that. Even more, he cut out the middlemen and let the state allocate the funds, which is what they were worried about because again, the grift goes away. And Option Trader says less chance for teachers union to use the funds for indoctrination. But they still do, and they're still trying, especially in blue states.
And again, Trump is doing a fantastic thing, but a lot of these things he's doing, not just this or that, but a lot of things, he doesn't have the House and the Senate, and he's having to rule by executive orders. This is why the midterms are important. If we can get the House and Senate, we can codify a lot of these executive orders into law. That's number one. But number two, we need to follow up in 2028 with a J.D. Vance or somebody that knows the ins and outs of the Trump administration so we can continue on with the policies and codify a lot of the stuff into law and have the final push to really stamp out globalism. Right now, globalism is trying to wait Trump out, and they possibly can for the next 2 years. But if it's followed up by another administration, it will be impossible to wait out another 4 years. But it has to be somebody that was in the Trump administration that knows the game plan inside and out and will follow those policies up.
My contacts keep moving around. Option Trader says, talking about education in America and my grammar fails me. LOL, embarrassing. Happens to me all the time, don't worry. Philip Vespa says, if Hassan is with her, then you know something is amiss. I have changed my opinion on the two-party system. When functioning correctly, it is the most healthiest form of a republic. When functioning correctly, as you said.
Yeah, and I'll never really support Democrats, and I think they want to get rid of the DSA so they can try to normalize themselves. But I think if they do normalize themselves and they got back into power, they would still go down that progressive path, and over 5 or 10 years, they would get exactly where the DSA is at again. They just want the power to lie in their hands, not the DSA's hands. Vote Republican at this point. Trump has done a fantastic job by changing that party from the inside out.
And also by trying to keep the globalists at bay and even getting rid of them. So let's go look at the Globalist Games.
Whatever they say is the opposite. Tell the truth.
Which there are aplenty, and a lot of it is that we are seeing and talking about right now is also their fault. And it's a part of the plan. Nick Sorter says, quote, the DOJ has arrested the former CFO of the Southern Poverty Law Center on fraud charges, AG Blanche confirms. Heidi Beirich was in charge of secretly paying donor money to quite white supremacist groups and ran SPLC's project tracking hate groups in the U.S. They were essentially paying people so they could still have a job to go against the white supremacists that weren't there, so they had to pay them to appear.
No, it went a lot steps further than that. Under the Biden administration, the number one threat in America was white supremacy, according to them, but it didn't exist. It was money flowing from USAID into people like this to then they would put direct funding into white supremacist organizations to make up something that wasn't actually there. And now that Trump's in office and that funding is cut off, we see white supremacy isn't even a freaking thing in the United States.
Sealed a case against the former chief financial officer of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Can you please speak a little bit about what you've learned as part of that investigation and if we should expect more charges?
So yes, today my understanding is today there was an arrest made and there is a new indictment that includes the former CFO of SPLC. I don't have any comments about whether we said from the beginning, everybody, not just me, but anybody who's talked about this case, like virtually every criminal case, the fact that an indictment is returned doesn't end the investigation. It's just part of the investigation in most cases, which is certainly true in this case. I think as alleged in the indictment, this individual participated in the scheme as alleged. I believe she was part of the effort to open bank accounts in completely fictitious companies' names and make payments to individuals for reasons that were not that were not accurate.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And this is how it happens. It takes time to clear out the swamp. This is part of it. The first thing he had to do was cut off the money. I'm surprised how well he was able to do that. I realized money was flowing out of USAID. I just didn't realize how much. Once he cut that off, I mean, I really started researching into that. And man, it seems like all roads led to USAID. And the second part was to start these investigations. The next thing was to lay charges and to give plea deals so that some of these people could blow the whistle on more and more people.
But next, Eric Doherty says, quote, holy see, California Democrats are moving to pass a law that lets criminals loose if they commit, quote, a crime of necessity, which I'm sure they get to describe what that means. This means that if the crime is just low level enough, the person can walk. This is utter madness. But again, this is on purpose to destabilize, I would say.
And it's very interesting how these crimes of necessity, how they categorize them. A lot of the times they're combined with DEI policies. So only people of certain races or creeds are able to claim a crime of necessity. There is no crimes of necessity. I mean, yeah, you can say it's a crime of necessity, but a crime's a crime and there has to be some kind of punishment there.
New bill that could give
turn it
a get out of jail free card. Now, it would create expanded diversion programs for offenses they consider crimes of necessity. But what exactly is a crime of necessity?
The amendments make it clear that this policy only applies to low-level theft crimes, no felonies, and codifies case law. And while we have diversion programs for drugs and mental health, we do not have the same for crimes of necessity led by poverty.
Joining us now, a man who's fighting back against this new bill, California State Assemblyman Carl DeMaio. Carl DeMaio, thank you for being here. What is a crime of necessity?
Well, basically, the Democrats say that if you're poor, that forces you to go out and rob a store. Now, let me be very clear. No one is robbing stores for food, bread, eggs, milk, or butter. They're stealing Nikes and PlayStations. Let's be very clear about what crimes and what criminals they're trying to protect with these diversion programs. More offensively, when this bill was brought up, the author of the bill and the Democrats said Donald Trump is responsible for the crime wave. Because of H.R. 1, the big, beautiful bill, people will be going hungry, which is not true. The big, beautiful bill is all about cracking down on fraud and protecting taxpayer money. People who need help will continue to get help. But they said Donald Trump's going to cause a crime wave, and so we need to make sure when people do commit crimes because of necessity, because they're poor, that they not be put in jail. Voters in California overwhelmingly rejected this coddle the criminal nonsense last year in Prop 36, and they said we want to punish criminals because we cannot have a crime wave impacting.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And something else I'd say, Canada's already kind of gone through this. One day I was bouncing at a bar I worked at, and there was a parking lot next door. Somebody broke a window for a car, started taking stuff out. I slammed him to the ground, had to hold him for like 45 minutes for the cops to eventually get there. Cops said, well, he took less than $1,000 and did less than $1,000 of damage. You have to let him go. Matter of fact, you're lucky we don't arrest you for detaining him, which was absolutely crazy. And we see in California, shoplifting, if it happens under $1,000, it's completely legalized at this point.
And again, it is that third worldism that continues to creep as socialism and communistic ideas also continue to creep, because why have expectations for people if you think that they're not able to achieve them? So it's the soft bigotry of low expectations where you don't think that people can restrain themselves, even if there's a lot of poor people that don't go around stealing stuff, especially PlayStations and Nikes or whatever he said. But the fact that the Democrats are now saying, no, but they can't help themselves, which is why we have to help them and we have to be kind to them. You're just allowing this to fester and continue to happen.
It's not like we're talking about a third world country here where there's not social safety nets and things like that. I grew up extremely poor. My mother was on welfare. We had food stamps. There's food stamp programs. There's housing programs. There's all kinds of programs. So people aren't stealing for food. And that's what he means when he says that. People are stealing not for necessity or not to eat. That's a different story.
But by excusing it, you're essentially lowering everybody else as well. But next, Fox News says, quote, we do bad things to bad people. Secretary Pete Hegseth unveils a new motto in the war on drug cartels. For too long, bad people did bad things to good people inside the United States of America and across Central and South America. And now they're going to empower great Americans and great partners to be capable of bringing violence against cartels and designated terrorist organizations.
And you don't need to play the clip here. I wanted to bring it up for the conversation. That is the shield of the Americas. This thing is actually working. They're going after organized crime in Central South America as well as Mexico. And good on them for actually doing it. The Americans had said they were doing this before with Reagan and things like that, but this is when we got the Iran-Contra scandal and a lot of other gun-running schemes and drug schemes like the Fast and the Furious project coming up under the border from Mexico and things like that. It looks like they're actually doing it because they're using cooperation with a lot of these new governments that are getting into power, and they want to undo the organized crime that has been plaguing Central and South America for a long time. These countries can't do it on their own. They really did need help, and Trump is not only offering that help, but he's kind of demanding it, because if he does want to make Central and South America the new Europe, you're going to have to clean up organized crime first.
But also within Mexico, for example, starting to dismantle the actual structure that has been built that has allowed this corruption to seep into government and to actually for government to have to or want to cooperate with these cartels by, for example, now canceling the visa of one of the kids of the former president, AMLO, but also the same party that is still ruling over Mexico, and doing all these little steps and actually going after the people that also enable this to continue to happen from the government itself, which is something that the country itself didn't want to do because it's them. But let's go back to your comments. Sean says, but the new buyers of the old business spent millions to get that name out of bankruptcy. You never heard about it. The Onion, which is nothing, did nothing. And I believe that actually went nowhere, but he's still, Alex Jones, so we're talking about his InfoWars show that kind of got bought by the Onion, but the Onion ended up not being really able to do much with it. However, Jones continues to not have much. Okay, then we'll wait for the guy for that story. Option Trader says the people in the DSA are white upper middle class and upper class second and third generation rich people who failed in life and feel entitled to things but never worked for it, so they hate the system that they come from. Exactly. And also because they've been taught this at the highest echelons of elite education, because that is where these ideas fester when they don't have to actually confront or even try to live with the ideas, or where they think that they will be the ones at the top once the revolution comes. Usually they're the ones that they chop the heads off.
Yeah, there was supposed to be an auction for InfoWars. What ended up happening, the auction didn't follow the rules, so the Onion was able to supposedly take control through that auction, but then that auction, I think, was found to be illegal, and then I don't know what eventually happened with that.
That's the thing. I think it kind of went into limbo, but Jones still cannot make profit from InfoWars.
Yeah, but he had buyers lined up to buy it on his behalf, so it's interesting. I'll have to look into what happened with that again, but I remember that auction. There was a lot of underhanded things that happened there. I'm glad the left didn't get eventually a hold of it, though.
Option Trader says the DSA are children from money who have no life experience, have never run anything, never worked or hard or built anything, so they lashed out at capitalism. They will burn down the house to prove a point.
Yeah.
And because they're allowed to burn down the house.
Well, and they're funded by foreign governments on top of that. That's where a lot of this funding is coming in from. And it was actually coming in from the Democratic Party themselves for a long time through USAID. So, I mean, the Democrats want to get rid of them now, or at least some of them do. They're the ones that created this monster.
Mm-hmm. Philip Vespa says, Alex Jones hasn't been the same since he lost his court case. Something changed after that. Yes, he had no money. He had no ability to continue with InfoWars, and he had to find new ways to sustain himself and new people to fund him, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say Tucker may have made a lot of those connections for him as well.
Wouldn't surprise me given that they're essentially the same person at this point. Option Trader says, I want U.S. Special Forces to go into Mexico and wipe out the cartels. However, the demand won't go away and someone will want to fill the need even if we wipe out all the cartels to dust. Well, in Canada, they try to solve it by making the government the dealer. That didn't work out either.
Yeah, the best way to actually address this, and it's happened before, what you have to do is put a ton of pressure on organized crime and the cartels in a place like Mexico. And you want them to legitimize all their businesses. The majority of their money is not made in drug running anymore. It's actually made in legitimized businesses. You want to put so much hurt on their illegitimate businesses and make a deal for them to legitimize themselves. And they're already in government, so you need to facilitate their ability to get into government and legitimize themselves completely. And that's the best way to usually get rid of a cartel. This is what happened with the KGB in Russia as well.
Don't love that idea, but
but it's the only real way to do it. Otherwise, you're gonna go. It's gonna get real messy.
Yeah. But over on our UMBLE, Cape for You says, "Welcome to the best news source in the world, Alberta Independence." Thank you so much for the praise. I would not say best, but thank you so much. Cape for You says the new healthcare system is save jibby jab sites or made your choice. Exactly.
Oh, there was something that happened today. I grabbed an article for the next time we do American Greatness, but that was one of Fauci's very close associates that were covering up a lot of the studies pled guilty today. So we'll kind of talk about that on the next episode, but they are going after these people. I realize Fauci got immunity and he's going to be hard to go after, but there's people connected to him. And those people are going to blow the whistle when they're offered a deal as well. So.
K4U says, they will never take my job, LOL. I believe KP4U is a trucker or was a trucker at some point. KP4U says, teachers are generally left, like approximately 85%. Gym, math, and science teachers are more likely to be on the right. I don't even know if anymore. But arts and English are probably more likely. The 90s, 90% left system has been hijacked. Sorry.
Well, it sounds like all the teachers that are men or gym,
the
science,
few
and
that
math.
are left. Because nowadays there's almost no men left. And that is also a problem, especially for young kids, for young male children. Canadian Spider-Man says, cartels, no cartels, whichever one gives us cheaper pina coladas. A deal with the U.S. is what would do that. But now, finally, let's go to what is going to happen in the U.S. with the midterms in TPUSA and the midterms.
I'm done, I'm pissed, and I'm not putting up with it anymore.
And let's start with this from America, just as America. Democrat Senate candidate James Tallarico, falsely claims the Save America Act, which would require voter ID and proof of citizenship, common sense, is trying to rob Black Americans of the right to vote.
And it's ridiculous how high this guy is polling. He's a gay Christian that says he learned a lot from Islam, and that gives him a lot of his core beliefs. Again, he's trying to spackle different demographics together that normally wouldn't be together. People need to come out and vote against this guy, even if they don't like his opponent at this time. The fact that he does not want voter ID, this says a lot about any candidate that does not want voter ID. They want rigged elections.
Well, they're saying they can't win without it.
Yeah.
With it, I mean.
We as human beings have the right to shape our own destinies, and we do that through the vote. And so many brave Americans, so many brave Black Americans have fought and died for that right. And so for politicians in Austin or in Washington, as they're now doing with the SAVE Act, they are trying to rob our neighbors, particularly our Black neighbors, of those God-given rights. So I have a track record of using every tool in my toolbox to protect voting rights. We as human...
Okay, and this is the old talking point, and this is years old at this point. All the polling has come out. Black Americans, brown Americans, Mexican Americans, white Americans, 76% of all Americans want voter ID, period. They used to use the Black community as a shield to say, oh no, they're not smart enough to get an ID. It's absolutely ridiculous. Everybody wants voter ID at this point.
And again, it's that soft bigotry of low expectations where they say, oh, but Black Americans don't know how to get IDs. And most Black Americans are like, hey, yes, I know, yes, I can, and I have one. And again, with Mexican American, every single other population, in every single other part of the world, this is just common sense. Even if the voter ID doesn't fully work and elections still get rigged, at least they have the mechanism in the system, and it's something that's been ingrained into these voting systems in all, if not most, of the world since they started their political systems.
This is
their democratic political
I don't even know how this got started, but it's out of control in the United States. The SAVE Act needs to be passed. We need to win the midterms so we can pass it for the 2028 elections.
And lastly, Muckraker says, quote, breaking, hidden camera captures Minnesota poll workers confirming alleged foreign terror organization members can vote if they are vouched for. Should I read it or play it?
No, we can play it, but oh God, not James Lindsay, but James...
I don't know.
Oh God.
There's a lot of James.
No, from Project Veritas.
O'Keefe, James O'Keefe.
Yeah, James O'Keefe did similar hidden camera things like this that we showed on one of our other episodes. I just wanted to show another one because we're talking about voter ID and how we need to clean up elections here.
You want me to read it? Or?
No, we can just play it.
Hopefully it's intelligible enough.
These guys were actually members of Hamas. They got here recently. I don't really know their citizenship status. They're from the Gaza Strip, and they want to vote today.
That's okay.
I can vote, right?
Correct. If he's vouching, you can vouch for up to 8 people.
My friends here would need to show what?
If you're vouching for them, they wouldn't need to show anything.
They don't need to show anything.
Is that like a common thing for people to vouch for Hamas members?
Probably.
In Minnesota's electoral system, there is a process known as vouching, where a registered voter can vouch for 8 non-voter registered individuals, and the vouching process stands in for a proof of ID or residency or other documentation that the vouchee would need to show in order to register to vote. So in other words, if I was registered to vote here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I could vouch for 8 other individuals who are not registered to vote, and all I would need to do is swear that I am verifying that the individuals I am vouching for live in the same precinct as I do. So what we're going to do today is speak to some election workers and ask, is it okay for me to vouch for some of my friends who just got flown in from the Gaza Strip, who are members of Hamas, and is it okay for them then to participate in today's election? Hi. We want to know more about the vouching.
So if you all live in this precinct, if one of you is able to register with the identity and residence verification documents, you can vouch for others who may live in the precinct as well. And you can vouch for up to 8 people as long as everyone lives in this particular precinct.
And then my friends here would need to show what?
If you're vouching for them, they wouldn't need to show anything.
They don't need to show anything?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we would verify your documents, so your identity, your residential documents, and then the people you're vouching
Okay,
for.
you can leave it there. And absolutely fantastic hidden camera expose. And James O'Keefe did almost an exact same expose, but at a different voting station. This is rampant, not just in Minnesota, but other places as well. California, no voter ID, not only needed, but if you try to give your ID at a California polling station, they will say no, we cannot accept it. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially when California is the #1 sanctuary state where they're having influxes of illegal migrants. You have to believe California's elections are rigged massively with illegal voters.
But also insane that, I mean, the the identity politics there going on was pretty obvious because the white guilt-ridden lady was obviously looking at who he was trying to vouch for and saying, and probably trying to facilitate it even more, which is insane. But it's also in Minnesota, and the fact that it's happening in Minnesota should be worrying because while that might have been just a recreation, let's just say, of a circumstance, I do think that that circumstance happens quite often as well. Rafa, hello, thank you for being here. Says, thank you so much for the 50 peso super chat. Says, hello, friendly reminder, it's almost August 20th. Sent you an email. Yes, I saw it. Sorry, I will reply to it, Rafa. Sorry. Thank you so much for being here, though. And I will reply to you. Don't worry. It takes me time, but I do reply. But now
Good to see you again.
Yes, thank you for being here.
Well, and one more other thing I will say, because we were talking about elections in Alberta, we need to register now for the poll watching jobs and other jobs when it comes to the election on October 19th. I think you have to register 8 weeks out for some of the positions, so now is the time.
And let's go back to your comments. Harley Squirrelnut says, if the demand goes, so do the cartels and need to clean up our yard. And that is also a thing that needs to be spoken with in conjunction with the cartel conversation, is the fact that the actual substance abuse and use, both in the US and Canada and other places, has gotten fully out of hand, and there doesn't seem to be anything they want to do about that. In the US, Trump is trying, but in Canada, they're literally trying to facilitate it, the government themselves.
Trump's doing an absolute fantastic job putting pressure on not only the Mexican president, but all kinds of Central and South American governments and giving them assistance when they need it, as well as he shut down the southern border. That has made a major impact. You're not seeing massive waves of illegal migrants and migrant caravans coming through Mexico anymore. It's really affecting immigration populations in Central America as well as Mexico, as well as the drugs just aren't getting across the border like they used to. Now they're actually shipping everything up to Canada, and they're opening operations in Canada. Canada is becoming the weak link. It's such a large border. It's going to be hard to clean up. They're going to need assistance from the Canadian government at some point, and I don't know if they're going to get that kind of assistance. They will get assistance from Alberta if Alberta does get its independence, though.
Canadian Spider-Man says he needs to be held accountable for his words. I believe James Talarico says, how dumb does he think black people are? They can't manage to get ID. Exactly. And sometimes it's insane that they don't realize that what they're saying is both incredibly bigoted, but also incredibly insulting to people that they're trying to help, because, at least the way I see it, they see underprivileged and people of color as babies, and they think that they're the parents that need to have to take care of the babies, and that's what makes them feel all warm and fuzzy inside, while they're actually being incredibly disrespectful and not having the expectations that they should.
It's nothing about expectations. So this has just been the way they've been able to rig elections for a long time, but they need some kind of talking point or excuse, and the black community has been that excuse for a long time. But now the black community is standing up and say, no, we want voter ID just like we want policing in our communities.
Canadian Spider-Man says, please explain what penalties are for falsely vouching for other people. She didn't say so, none then. A 10-year-old knows you need ID to vote. Why are we even debating this? So dumb.
Yeah.
Option Trader says, the left says no foreigners are voting in our elections. 1776 solves a lot of these problems.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of these cities, you're having voter populations bigger than the populations of the cities themselves. Something's wrong there.
But they don't want to see it or look at it or talk about it because it benefits them. So why would they? K4U says, I had a Mexico sister for a year. She did her grade 12 here. She said it was so much easier. Oh, probably like an exchange program. I didn't understand how to do it. Okay. But yeah, exactly. And that's because the standards are so low that even Mexican students go over and say, I've learned this 3 years ago. PB says progressives never stop moving left. They always go socialist. I mean, and again, that is the pipeline.
And it's just, what rate do you want to go socialist at? Do you want to go at the DSA rate, or do you want to go at the Democratic rate? We need to push back against this. The Democratic rate for decades was a fairly slow rate, so a lot of people didn't notice what was happening. Once the DSA arrived on scene, things started moving a lot faster, so people woke up, and this is where you get Trump pushing back. And this is why we need to reverse these lost decades of wokeness.
Also because they got desperate, so they allowed that to fester even faster. I said that funny. K4U says, I watched Alex Jones for years, but something changed with him in Trump's second term. Haven't watched him since then.
Both Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, huge disappointments where they've gone recently. Candace Owens as well, but I never watched as much Candace as the other individuals. But when she was linked up with TPUSA, I agreed with a lot of the things that she was saying. She's just completely gone unhinged. I mean, Nick Fuentes was part of that entire troop. He recently realized, wow, I better detach from this if I want some kind of career, because people are seeing through this right now.
But because they live in their echo chambers, they think they have a lot more influence and that they know a lot more about their audience and about what their audience wants or wanted than they do.
Yeah, and it's not to say Nick Fuentes is sane at this point, but at least he was smart enough to detach from that train, because that train is headed off the cliff.
Yeah. PBE 77 says, if you rent or own, drive a car, have a job, pay taxes, have a bank account, have cable and internet, you have an ID.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's not that hard. And it's insulting to say people don't know how to get it. PBE says, how the hell is this legal in America? Just vouch for non-citizens to vote in our elections. AOC and Abby Phillips swear this isn't happening. Like, WTF.
Well, and then there's another thing here. Like, how the hell is this happening? But a step further, how are the Democrats honestly standing up against this and thinking that there's not going to be a backlash against this?
Mm-hmm. Option Trader says, you don't hate the mainstream media enough. They're just partisan opinion hacks who openly lie 24/7. But sadly, unfortunately, not just the mainstream media, but now that content creation and online media has also become a profitable scheme and source and a way to influence people, well, of course, the same actors will start coming in, and now we're seeing it. I mean, it's the clear examples are Tucker, Owens, Jones at this point, and others that 180'd in their opinions. Megyn Kelly is another one.
Absolutely. And it's not to say that I'm going to agree with every single thing Trump does or says. And when I don't like something, I'll call it out. But I love the overall direction that they're going. They're making massive inroads against globalism, against the DSA, against the Democratic Party, against all these decades that it was progressive. We lost our Christian foundation and that non-moving moral foundation that the United States once used to have. You're not going to win on every single point, but he's the best that we got. And after him, J.D. Vance is going to be able to continue a lot of those policies that we have. And hopefully, I mean, you can get a J.D., another president, and then Barron Trump.
Option Trader says, the left said for 4 years Biden was running circles around them in meetings, but we could see that he was sharp as a marble. And again, we already know what's going to happen with them. We've already seen what happened with Biden and the lies that they were already perpetuating from the mainstream media, but also the political operatives that were benefiting from having essentially Weekend at Bernie's as president.
Well, they're trying to go after Trump to say his health is in bad shape and they want to see all of his medical records. Well, hell, they wouldn't give anything when Biden was in there. And as far as I can tell, Trump is doing our press conferences still.
And lastly, Option Trader says the left will lie and say anything just to beat Orange Man bad in elections. Sometimes I even think they don't even know why they want to win at this point. They just want to win because they just want power.
There was the biggest psyop in history may have been this Orange Man bad psyop that they had, because in reality, if you really look at Trump's record and you really look at his history, he used to be a Democrat for the most of his life. Most of his policies, even to this day, are Democratic policies. Mm-hmm. He's a Democrat from, I used to say from the 90s, but actually from 2010 back.
Exactly. But on that note, let's actually go over to RUMBLE. The show is not over, but the next stories are a bit too spicy for YouTube. But before we head over there, please don't forget to subscribe and to like the video, because when you like the video, it also really helps us out, and it's free for you. We'll see you over there in about 30 seconds. Oh, hold on quickly. Option Trader says President Biden was mentally gone, and his press secretary lied every day that he's focused and sharp.
Absolutely.
And I think that will also maybe help open a few more people's eyes, I would say. Let's go over to RUMBLE, 30-second wait screen, and we'll see you over there.
Let's get